Hello and welcome to the Be Formless Flow Driven CEO podcast, where we are reshaping life, leadership, and business from the inside out. I have the privilege of welcoming to the show today Lynn Casey, all the way from Los Angeles. Welcome to the show, Lynn.
Delighted to be here, B. Thank you so much for having me.
No, thank you. And we were just saying pre-show, I always get such inspiration from women like you because you've had your business. You've been an entrepreneur and had your business for 19 years.
Wild.
Wild, right? But it gives me so much, I guess, inspiration and motivation, given I'm only a baby in this in terms of 2 years into having my own company. And I want to celebrate some of your success because you are the founder and CEO of Shine Scout. I love the name of your company, by the way. And essentially, it is a consumer insights and future trends consultancy that is working with a huge amount of Fortune 500 brands. To name a few, you have the likes of Meta, Coca-Cola, Shiseido, huge amount of entertainment brands. It's quite incredible. Just have to check out the website and you'll see it all. And whereby you turn deep human insight into innovation and growth. You're a recognized trend expert and coach, and your work is, focused on, you call yourself cultural cartographers, and I'll get you to share a bit about that. But I loved this piece around that equates to the alchemy, and nothing close to my heart than when it has heartbeats in it, emotions, technology, and data points. And you're all about what's next and what's shaping the future. The other part I wanted to share was, and again, this was like right up, for me, really important, is that when I asked you what was one unique insight or lived experience when it comes to life, leadership, and or business, you said that everything you have dreamt of lives on the other side of the word no. So tell us a bit about your journey, because 19 years in business, no, it probably becomes very like no. No means no, right? So I'll hand it over to you.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. And I will say that despite the 19 years in business, given the landscape that we're all living in right now, right? Given the rapidity of change, given the rise and fall of trends and cultural movements, life is so unpredictable. So there's nothing that I did 6 months ago that I expect to be doing 6 months from now, right? We're all just learning to surf change. So having that sort of beginner's mind that you have, it's something I try to bring it to every engagement. I mean, that's the beautiful part about doing consumer insight work.
Yeah,
You do not know what you're going to find,
no,
and my clients will say to me, okay, like, where do you think this is going to land? I'm like, I don't. That's why we're doing the work, right? That's the exciting part.
yeah,
We're cultural detectives heading out into the world, asking questions, listening, finger to the wind, looking for signals, and then starting to gather a little bit of momentum that starts to take us into the truth, right?
yeah,
But it's
yeah,
always discovery. It's always
yeah.
discovery.
I love that.
So super
I
fun.
love, yeah, super fun, super fun. Tell
Mhm.
me a little bit about the alchemy and, as part of discovery and, this heartbeats, the emotions, the tech and the data points, because as cultural detectives, let's use that language. I love that language,
Sure.
by the way. You're constantly, you're on the search, you're on the hunt, and you would of course be using the likes of AI, tech, data points, but then there's this, human element too. How does that form part of your business?
So what I've learned, and this sounds counterintuitive, B, but what I've learned is that the only thing we can rely on actually is the human element. Now, you would say, well, that's the least predictable of all. But hear me out. So what technology gives us is the what, right? Technology is really great at setting the table. Here's what's happening. Here's what people are buying. Here's what, we're predicting they're going to do. So what? But what is based on past data.
Yeah.
Okay. It's a capture, right? So you may have bought like 5 pairs of black boots last quarter. I know that's a problem for me, but you may have bought
I
5
do
pairs.
have beats. Don't get me wrong, I do love them.
But if I don't know why you're doing that, I can't really predict what you're going to do next, right?
Yeah.
So what I've learned is we can't count on the what. That what is going to change, right? And when you think about large Fortune 500 companies, I was working in the 90s, totally willing to date myself here. I was, working in the 90s, and what we could do pre-internet is you could say things like purple, Purple's going to be it, man. 1998 is going to be the year of purple, right? And this would be like the end of 1996. And that's what like trend hunters would do. And that's what, our culture cartographers would do. And so we'd all decide it's going to be purple, which would give our partners the 18 months it was necessary to get something out onto the floor.
Mm.
We can't do that now.
No.
We can't sit there and go, purple, 2028, purple. Like, that's not possible, right? So, what we have to do is we have to look at, and this is where the alchemy comes in. We have to look at what's happening geopolitically, what's happening demographically, what's happening culturally, what's happening in subcultures. And you start to pull all this together and you make these sort of emotional maps. How are we feeling? Where are we
Mm.
going? What are the
Mm.
things we desire?
Yeah.
Right? Coming out of COVID, it was a pretty easy prediction that we were going to have this big sort of dopamine hit, right? People were going to live really loudly and we were going to want to have all these big experiences and dance parties and bright colors. But what we were also able to predict was that there'd be a snapback, right?
Yeah.
There'd be this desire of like, whoa, yes, I went out and did all that, but I'm used to a lot of quiet. I'm used to a lot of space, right? So we went from the joy of going out to the joy of staying in,
Yeah.
right? And we started to get this whole like, I'd rather stay in, the fabulous moment when your friends cancel. We started to see this shift from going out to the club to people having dinner parties and entertaining in their houses. So it's really understanding that long tail of what's happening in the world. How does that make us feel? And what is
Yeah.
it that's the
Gosh.
intersection that I like to play in.
Yeah, it's a great intersection, isn't it? Yeah, it's such a great intersection because, like, I mean, I think you mentioned the what. It can't predict anything anymore in terms of, and so we've got all this technology at us, and I think everyone's looking for that to tell us what's next and tell us what's going to happen in the future. When actual fact, it's so up for grabs right now in terms of, there's so much uncertainty. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone next week, let alone, in 6 months' time. How do you manage that with your clients, with the Fortune 500 companies? Because, a lot of companies are looking for that certainty, when it comes to ensuring that they're hitting their targets, etc. Like, how do you explain that to them? Like, because if you go into a business and you're like, well, we don't know, like, do you know what I mean? Like, you must come up against that at times.
Well, part of it is when they decide to engage me.
Yeah.
So, B, I'm not the first person in line. They've already spoken to McKinsey. Maybe they've had IDEO in. They've worked with EY. They've worked with the big, solid consulting groups that run primarily on numbers. And no shade, we need that sort of analytics. I use those type of
Yeah.
analytics, but
Yeah.
I use them as a foundation piece. Okay, so
Yeah.
I build on top of those, right?
Yeah.
So where they stop, I start. So what typically happens is one of my clients will have worked with them. They will have gotten certain answers that maybe are not that exciting. Like, oof, based on what we're seeing in the marketplace and who you are, I think you guys need to cut your prices, lay off some staff, and pray. Believe me, I've heard that a lot. So
Yeah.
then they're like, maybe we'll talk to Lynn, right? And then I said, let's go find out what's really happening. Let's go
Mm.
find out what people really want. Because once you know where that desire is, right? Once you know the why behind the what, then we can start to anticipate. Then we can start to, co-create, develop something new. I did a huge project with Ace Hardware, which is, funny. You're like Lynn Casey, first person I'd call for a hardware store, but amazing people, one of the largest retail groups in the United States. And they were getting their lunch eaten by Home Depot and by Lowe's, right?
Mm.
And they had been told by several of these big consulting groups that, not looking good for you, right?
Yeah.
But when I went out and we started doing all this ethnographic work and really talking to people about their homes, we found so much fear.
Yeah.
People decorate their homes totally as an external exercise, right? What will people think? How will people feel? What am I
Mm.
saying about myself, right? It's rare that you meet someone who's like, screw it, I love turquoise and I'm painting my whole house turquoise, right? People are very fearful and they don't know what to do. So Once we started to understand the sort of emotional power of paints, of home design, of home decor,
Mm.
we created a whole educational system for the people who worked in the store, right? They became experts. So if you went into the store and you're like, "Eesh, I don't know, I want to paint my bedroom," but it's like, I got you.
Yeah,
We're going to have all these deep conversations. We're going to find out about you and we're going to reflect what it is you want to reflect, right?
yeah.
Which also, that sort of in-depth work would create a really strong bond. So
Mm.
we ended up closing 3,500 stores for 3 days, completely re-outfitting them to reflect this like bright, sunny, colorful design
Amazing.
studio feeling, right?
Yeah,
Women, and that was the other thing, everyone, all hardware stores designed for men. And no shade on men, but 83% of home decisions are made by who?
women.
Yep. So we designed a store for women.
Yeah,
Bright colors, inspiration cards, the nursery and the plant stuff up front. Like we got them excited about transformation and change.
yeah. I love it. You know what pops up for me? I mean, I have to say, years ago, I painted my bedroom wall silver. And I remember the
Mhm.
painter at the time going, "You can't do that," like losing his mind at me. And I'm like, "Yes, I can." But I'm like the abnormal. Like, I'm like, you know what?
I,
Like, I'm
I, I got your vibe, Bia. Like as soon as I saw that painting, I'm like, okay, we're the same animal. It's good.
totally right. Well, she's got lots of she's always thinking, but lots of ideas. But yeah, I'll never forget that. But generally, so if a painter did that to anybody else, they'd probably be like, yeah, no, I can't, right? But, I'd love your thoughts on this, Lynn, because obviously, you are an expert in this space. But it feels like for me, for so long, we've all like sought out this external validation. And so anything that is like, no, you can't do that. We retreat and we get fearful. And so, like, coming back to, your home and, how you decorate it, like, you got to keep it like the Joneses, like status quo. I mean, not everybody, do you know what I mean? But,
Mhm.
I'm starting to think, well, I know that, like, there is just this complete shift, I feel like, that's happening at this very moment in time where it's like, let's stop seeking this external validation because it's just creating this fear of change and this resistance. And let our internal or like inside shine, like to name your company, so that we can be true to who we are, our authentic selves, express ourselves as a society because the current way that everything's happening isn't working, and hence why there is all this, uncertainty in everything that's happening in the world. Like, do you think there's something in like, do you think there's something in internal versus, external, like from a validation perspective, I don't know, like I guess I'm just like, I think I'm coming to the fear and resistance of change and what's causing it so much because it feels like it's getting worse than yeah, and I'd love your thoughts on that.
I think we're in the midst of a deep, deep transformation about exactly what it is you're talking about. In fact, I wrote a LinkedIn article about this yesterday.
I'll have to read it.
Well,
Share it.
my jumping off point was during Men's Fashion Week this week, Prada showed men's French cuffs hanging out of the jackets, and they were visibly stained. They were dirty. And everyone was like, "What?"
You can't do that.
Right. But it speaks to exactly what's going on right now, right? So, what we're seeing with this huge rise of tech and AI and this very sort of inhuman world that we're starting to see being built around us. And again, it started in COVID, right? We all had to retreat into our little cubby holes. And tech was our only window out. It was like our little periscope out, right? And we became quite dependent on it. And, God bless. It's amazing that we had it. But we now feel very trapped by, again, all these external forces and all these external rules. This
Mm,
is how you have to look. This is what you have to
yeah,
buy. And I'm seeing a dramatic change. We're going from that hyper perfectionism that we were seeing in, the skincare and the whole idea, that whole clean skin look, which of course spoke to perfect skin, right? You can't do clean skin if you don't have perfect skin, right? We were seeing skinny models showing back up on the runway. Like we were seeing this whole and there has been this whole counter movement. It's really starting to bubble up, and I give Gen Z a great deal of credit for it. They put
yeah.
a stake in the ground for mental health during COVID. They called it out. They're like, "We are not well." And everyone's like, "Oh, we don't talk about that." And they're like, "We're going to
We
talk about that."
Yeah.
right? And then there was this whole like, who are you? Who am I? Right? This push against that whole bifurcation, this idea that I have to be male or female, I have to fit into these boxes, right? It's like, no, I don't live in a binary world. I'm going to feel this way today. I'm going to feel that way tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
what we're seeing is this real push into humanness, right?
Mm.
I think 2026 is going to be the year of the analog. It's going to be the year of humanness, right?
Yeah.
The rise of the human. We want to see messy hair. We want to see a couple of, cigarettes maybe that were like burning in the ashtray, right? Cold
I
pizza
love
in your
it.
refrigerator. It's this real drive to say, this is not AI. This is not perfect. I'm going to live my life. And you know what? I want to live my life. Living is messy. Living has friction. Technology tries to eliminate friction.
Yes, and perfect
Humanness,
it. AI is trying to
yes,
perfect everything, and it's doing my head in. Like, I was it's so funny. Like, look at this. I've got a I've got a nail, like 2 nails, and I'm like,
I love it. It looks,
I'm trying
I
to hide.
assumed that was a statement.
No, it's because I'm due to get my nails done, but I'm at that point of I haven't had time, like it's just, and so this is, I get told all the time, B, you're not doing this right on social media and you're not doing that right. And I'm like, you know what? I'm doing it how I want to do it because I'm sick of being told how to fit in. And I think you're right. Like, absolutely, that, now isn't the time to embrace who you truly are and be as human as you possibly can be because I can't be anything else. Like,
Of course you
and I,
can't.
and I think the older we get, and, like, I'm not afraid to say my age either. I'm 48, I was saying to you before, but, like, I think more and more I'm just like, and I said this to my niece a few weeks ago. She's 15 and she's worrying about all the we had dinner together and she was telling me how stressed she was about her life and what was next and planning and, all her friends were talking about their future and, settling down. And I'm like, "Babe, you're 15." Like, and she looked at me and I'm like, "Look at me." Like, then I'm called, kind of the crazy Auntie B, but my point is, like I said to her, like, "You don't even need to be thinking about that right now."
At all.
Like,
At all. This is a grand experiment. That's all life is, right?
yeah.
It's a grand experiment. We're in the lab, and all we can be is ourselves,
Mm,
right? And that's where the beauty of this experience comes from, right?
mm,
And
mm.
so, that's why I love the work that I do because I'm not asking people to check boxes in a survey. I mean, we'll do quantitative work to start off, again,
Yeah,
to kind of build that foundation.
yeah,
And I'll look at the reports again from a Nielsen or a Mintel or a Cohen or a Forrester, again, to build a base. But the juice, right? The alchemy, the change happens in these heartfelt conversations where I'm sitting in
yeah,
a minivan with a mom at 4 o'clock in the afternoon and she's crying because she's just done. She's knackered. She's
yeah.
had it. And we really get into it and we start to understand what's driving her. What gets her up in the morning? What does she really wish and long for? And then I
Mm,
can help steer these brands to meet them at that point of desire, right?
yeah. I love it. I love it. It's so true. And they're the brands and the businesses that are going to stand out. And I guess I was reading something, I mean, like even from a department stores in the US and the Macy's of the world. And I think there was another one that's have they shut down or they're closing down because they were talking about the retail stores over in the US and then the two big retail stores here that are, on the, they were from a dinosaur era, and I was like, "That is so fascinating," like, in terms of just even thinking about that, right?
Well, I think it's a question of figuring out what do we want from shopping, right?
Mm, mm.
So there's no need anymore. Like, I don't need to go to Macy's or Saks to buy a
That's
sweater.
about sex, yeah.
In fact, yes, Saks declared bankruptcy and there's a lot of challenges right now. Not only do I not need to go to Saks to buy a sweater, if I go to Saks to buy a sweater, it's probably going to be a fairly disappointing experience because if I go online and pull up all my different websites, I have a plethora of choices. If I go into Saks, I have limited choices, right? So why go to a store? Well,
Mm.
what has to start happening now is Gen Z in particular want to do physical things. They want to go into
Yeah,
retail
yeah,
110%. But what retail has to create for them is unique experiences. It
yeah.
has to be entertainment, right?
Mm.
It has to be memorable. It has to give me a reason to go. Like Nordstrom's is now doing, pop-up shops with pop-up grocer, like CPG products in the middle of their stores. Why? Because it's kind of wild and it's fun and they're collectibles and it's things to see and do, right?
Yeah.
You've got all these stores creating places where you can do repair or rework or redone, right? So
Mm.
what you have to do is rethink the physical space and say, what would make this exciting? What would make it worthwhile for someone to come? And to almost be buying something as they leave as a souvenir of the experience,
Yeah.
right?
It's so true about the experience. So, I mean, that's the all the humanist piece, right? You mentioned
Yeah.
analog. Tell us a
hmm
little bit about the analog piece. I mean, I think I know what you're talking about here, but I'd love your, like, when you said, you're going to see more of this in 2026. Is that like completely switching off from this
Yes.
digital world we're in?
It's understanding that this digital world is not necessarily doing us all the favors that we thought it were, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, like, one of the most popular items over Christmas was this item called Brick. And it's something that you attach to your cell phone and it will remove all of the apps for a period of time. Right?
Mm.
So, we all put those settings on, right? Like, I'll have 20 minutes for my social media. And then the minute the 20 minutes comes up, I'm like, ignore, 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 right? Like, you just keep going. This
Yeah.
literally takes them off,
Yeah. Right.
right? So now I'm forced to use my phone or my computer for what those uses are, as opposed to doom scrolling, as opposed to, bed rotting, as opposed to just, falling off a cliff and
Mm.
waking up 2 hours later and like, I've been on TikTok for 2 hours, right? So, people want to be weaned from these devices, right?
Mm.
So,
Mm.
what are the products and services that help us separate from those, right? And again, touch grass, be outside. 76% of Gen Z says they are actively seeking physical experiences for 2025, 2026. We want to be with people outside doing things.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so
So,
important. Yeah. Sorry, I interrupted you.
no, no, it's just really, really exciting. And it's like we kind of have to go back to, 2009, though I know 2016 is the big rage right now. But if you go all the way back to 2009, when the internet really started to take off as a connecting device, you know, what were our lives like then? So there's a
Yeah.
great deal of nostalgia for that idea of, serendipitous collision, like bumping into someone and starting a conversation, meeting someone that way, discovering that way, right? So when I look at what's happening right now, one of the trends that I've been really tracking is something I call choreographed collision, right?
Mm.
So I might say, okay, I'm going to go to a club, but I don't know how to just like, what am I just going to go up to the bar and start chatting? So there's mahjong clubs or rummy cube clubs, right? Or line dance. So I will go and someone has choreographed a way for me to enter into that area and meet people because we're all doing something together.
It's very Yeah, I love it because, I mean, obviously from a lonely like, a mental health and then this loneliness, epidemic, like, it's like people do wanna get back to connecting, but it's almost like we've forgotten how to since
Oh, we
COVID, like,
don't know how. We don't
no,
know
we
how.
don't, and it's a different form of connecting. It's not the connecting pre-COVID. I mean, Melbourne here in particular, we had the longest lockdown in the world. It was
You guys were
wild.
you guys were s I've got
It
a
was
couple
Yeah.
associates in Australia, and it was like, the one woman I've done some work with, her sister lived 2 miles down the road, and she could not go see her sister.
Yeah, it was insane. And I look at us and I think and I go into the city and I think it's quite sad quite often because you go in and it's just like it used to be a really vibing city and it's just dull because we've almost retreated, right? So there's almost
Yes.
like this external, stopping the external validation and getting back to our humanness and our authentic selves. But then there's the other on the flip of that, there's almost we're too inward focused and not enough getting out and connecting. And so the analog, what you're talking about here, is that ability to allow us to do that, to create the space because we are so overloaded. I mean, I did a little experiment over the Christmas break and I took 10 days off any AI tool because
Mhm.
I was just at capacity. still checked socials, which I should have just completely switched off at all. But I noticed a significant difference in me just in terms of that ability to just be clear. I have fresh perspectives, not feeling like I was just loading myself up because it just gets to a point where it becomes completely overwhelming and just being able to just be. I think being able to be present, to pause, do all those things that we used to do, but we've just forgotten how to do. And then it comes back to connection because when we're so loaded up, we're exhausted. And so then we don't want to catch up with people because we just want to be able to sit. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and just stare
Well,
at
of
almost
course.
like a brick wall.
Right. But one of the things that wellness research is showing is that exactly what you're talking about, where we're like, I need to rest. Rest, as in physically lying down on a couch and scrolling on your phone, is actually
No,
not restful,
no, no.
right? So if you actually said, I'm going to meet three girlfriends and we're going to go for a walk, that's actually much more restful and rejuvenatory to your system, right?
Yeah.
So it's sort of like, how do we switch tracks in our head as opposed to going from, we think we're going from mental to physical. I'm resting, right? But we're occupying our brain in the same way we were occupying it when we were working.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we need to switch tracks.
Yeah, I love that. I call it active recovery, Lynn. I'm a big
Hey.
believer in it, and we need that active recovery, in our on a micro on a daily basis.
Mhm.
The ability to, yeah, not it does recovery is not just sitting there watching TV or having a glass of wine. Recovery is exactly what you're talking about, and I think it's needed more than ever. I want to ask you a couple of questions about you as an entrepreneur. You've had your company
Mhm.
for 19 years.
Yep.
You're in this what's next, shaping the future. How have you done it? Like, how have you ever had moments where you're like, "I'm not sure this is going to actually, you know, last the distance?" Like, at 19 years, like, that's huge. Kudos to you, and a super successful business. You're so, like, knowledgeable and, like I said, Fortune 500 companies. What's enabled you to keep going, like, in terms of being an entrepreneur and especially as a woman?
So I think I have to start with a confession. So I'm an accidental entrepreneur. I was not the young woman saying like, can't wait to start my own thing. Like, let me at 'em. Never in my life did it occur to me that that's what I was going to do. Not once. I didn't even have a lemonade stand when I was little. Not, not on my, vision board. But I was working at, I was vice president of marketing at Paramount Pictures. And it was a big job and it was a challenging job, and I had little ones. And I was one of the most unhappy people on the planet. It was really, really
Mm.
hard. I had a 1 hour commute each way. So 2 hours of my day was spent in a car. Got little kids at home. You may not know this, but studios can be very political.
Ugh,
And
that's what you
it
read.
and I was becoming more and more unhappy. And I finally woke up one day, and this is everything you want is on the other side of no. I did not have a plan. I did not have a yes. I didn't have a vision, but my no was so loud
Mm.
that I knew I had to listen to it. And I'm a Virgo. I don't do things without a plan. Like, I don't cross the
No.
street without a plan, right? But that no was so clear that I realized I had to listen to it and trust that there was an answer on the other side. So I quit. I broke my contract. I quit, drove home. People were very shocked and a bit appalled because it's a prestigious job, and they're like, you just walked out. And I sat at home, played with my babies, and I kept thinking like, okay, what am I going to do? Like, did not have a plan. And I got a call from the studio about 6 weeks after I quit. And I'd gotten calls from some recruiters, and I, started to take a couple calls, but literally did not have a plan. And then the studio called me and said, could I come back in for a meeting? I thought I was in trouble. I'm like, I took my art, but they said I could take my art. Anyway, long story short, they asked me if I could continue doing the work I had been doing, but I could do it in the capacity of an external consultant.
Oh, how cool.
Never have to come in the studio. You don't have to deal with anyone. We'll come out to your house, set up a computer, and you'll have an assistant on the lot if you need one. But like, we want you to keep doing what you're doing. So I was like, okay. I thought I literally don't have a plan. So we'll jump in and do this for a bit and see how it goes. And what happened was I was really good at it. Like, I'm a self starter. I would get up in the morning. I was very organized. I knew who to reach out to. So I was able to run and sustain a business. And then from there, after I realized that I could do that, and they kept renewing their contract with me. I'm like, can I have other, like, is it cool if I have other clients? And they're like, yeah, as long as you're doing what you're doing. I'm like, okay. So I started to shift the emphasis on what I was doing. I became more curious about the why, right? About this sort of the insights of what drives us to do what we do. So I began to steer the ship in a different
I love
direction.
it.
And there was
Yeah.
enough work and interest there that I was able ultimately to let go of the studio contract. So I think what I've been able to do is follow my own muse
Yeah.
and
Cool.
just it's I'm trying to answer the questions I as a human being want to answer. And so far that's worked out.
Yeah. Do you think intuition has a big part to play in this? Like in
Huge.
terms of, yeah, like I mean, I have this conversation all the time. Like I'm a massive believer in the intuition, and
Huge.
when you were calling, I think you what did you say was saying what was screaming at you? I always think about it as my soul because I remember how vividly loud mine was when I had my moment a few years ago, and it was just like I couldn't. It was just like screaming. It was so
Yeah.
loud. It was like literally someone was screaming in my ear, and everyone you just like, "Something's gotta change here because I cannot continue with this screaming."
Yeah.
And, it's that intuition, and when you go against that intuition, I find that everything kind of goes wrong, if that makes sense, in terms of, like, it's like, "I should have done it," like, so it's, like, always backing that intuition. Was that's clearly been a big part then of the success of your business, even, like, when it comes to clients and relationships and knowing if culturally they're the right fit or not. You have that ability to be able to go into a room, meet a client, for example, or meet them from a chemistry session, and you know pretty quickly whether you're gonna vibe or not, right?
Yes, and I think we're all as one of the big buzz terms for 2026 is nervous system regulation,
Mm,
right? We're all trying to regulate our nervous systems.
yeah,
But again, that's speaking to this idea of listening to our nervous systems, right?
yeah,
Understanding when something's right or wrong, good or bad, for us or not for us,
yeah,
right? And my clients count on me to do that for them.
yeah.
I'll give you one of my favorite stories. Reebok had invited me out to do a presentation. They were looking at doing a program with trends and youth, right? And so I go out and I've got my laptop and I've got, one of my account people and we're ready to like rock and roll. And I walk into the conference room B and there's probably 15 or 16 people sitting there and there's so much terror in the room. And I'm like, something's not right.
Yeah,
Right. So I'm like opening up my computer and everyone's being very polite, but like something really bad has gone down. Right. So I put the first slide up and then I stopped and I said, you guys, I don't know what's going on and I don't know what you guys are dealing with, but I have this feeling that something really dramatic has happened and you all are being very polite, but I'm here and you've paid me to be here. Is there a problem that I can help you with while I'm here? Because I don't think anyone wants to listen to an hour and a half presentation on youth trends
no.
right now. And what happened was Nordstrom's had just notified them that they were dropping them from
Ex
all their stores.
Yeah,
They were no longer going to carry the fashion line from Reebok. And so they were like reeling and so I'm like, get me a whiteboard, get me some markers. We dove in, we did a whole afternoon of ideation and workshopping. We came up with a really, really cool plan of rolling out these very hip, very edgy subculture events across all the key cities. We ended up implementing it over the course of the year and it was extremely successful and Nordstrom's came back. So it was being able to walk in, feel what was going on
energetically,
energetically, and then having the courage to address that, right?
yeah,
And
I
listen,
love it.
kudos to them because they all could have said, no, no, do your thing. And then as soon as I was done, they all could have run out the door. But we have to listen to what we
Actively,
know to be
yeah.
true, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, active listening for me, that curiosity, you were curious. You're like, the vibe's not right. Like, why would I present? Like, you would have been just, you wouldn't have been listening at all, right? And nothing would have
Of
cut
course
through.
not.
So instead, you were
No.
like, and then it's that ability to have that adaptability and fluidity to be able to pivot. So sure, you've got this hour and a half prezzo, it's all sorted. But I think, that was going to be one of my final questions for you. What do you see as leaders? What leaders need, in 2026 and, ongoing, like to be a successful leader when it comes to living in this world we're living in. I quite often joke and laugh and think, gosh, if only there was it would have been a degree on COVID or a pandemic, I would have been in good stead because I was like, what the, I won't swear, but like at the time as a leader, I was like, this is like wild. But I think if you have those, traits, like, so yeah, so one of my last questions would be, what do you think leaders need more of and less of?
Three C's: curiosity, courage, and connectivity.
Yeah,
We
love it.
have to be curious. It's putting in the right prompts to AI. It's asking the right questions. It's looking over there even though everything is saying, "Look over here," right?
Mm,
So, curiosity is a muscle that we have to really start developing. Courage, to go against the grain, to say, "I don't know," to wonder out loud, to make a dramatic change. And connectivity is because that's where the learning is going to come from, right? Who's in your community? Who's in your network? Who's working for you? Who is a 23-year-old who might know exactly what's going on, what's next, what's the next cool
yeah,
trend, and you're 6 floors up. That's the person you have to make time to go and talk to, right? Go and sit in a coffee shop for half a day and eavesdrop on conversations. I will go to the airport 3 hours before my flight because I learned so much looking at people in airport lounges, understanding what it is they're talking about.
that's
I
cool.
eavesdrop, I take pictures of what they're wearing. Where can we find, be curious about, and understand where human beings are actually connecting? So the 3 C's for sure.
I love it. And then last but not least, I am conscious of your time. You've talked about the trends. Is there anything else that you would like to share around what you're seeing? Like, I mean, we've covered a lot of ground. Is there anything, or is there any final thing you would like to share with the audience when it comes to, I guess, shaping the future? What's next? Change? We've talked about humanness, the analog. Is there anything else you'd like to share?
All I would really like to share to anyone I talk to, I do a lot of mentoring. It's any risk you dream of taking is worth the payoff. Yep. Take the risk. The only thing we regret at the end of the day is the things we didn't do. It's
Yeah.
not the messy, silly things that we did do, even if they didn't work out, right? We're here again. We're in the lab. We're here to experiment. We're here to be messy. We're here to be human. So take the risk, jump through the window, do the thing. You won't regret it.
Yeah, I love it. So true. Yeah. That's why I get inspo from these conversations myself is listening to someone like, yeah, I'm going to keep going. I want to have my business for, 19 years. Like, I got a long way to go. But, Lynn, it's been an incredible conversation. How do we find out more about Shine Bright? How do we find out more about you?
So I have a website. So it's www.shinescout.com.
Sorry, it's not Shine Bright, Shine Scout. Sorry, how embarrassing.
Okay. We
Sorry.
shine bright at Shine Scout.
I had it in my head, but it just came out to Shine Bright, Shine Scout.
It's great. I have a Substack, Chasing Human, and I write a lot on LinkedIn. So if you find me on LinkedIn, if you find Casey on LinkedIn, I'm a frequent article
Writer.
writer.
Love it. Love it. Yeah, I will definitely be subscribing to Chasing Human. Maybe I already have. I'll have to check that. And I'll go check out that article from yesterday as well, and I'll put it in the show notes. Lynn, thank you
Great.
so much for your time today, and I'm wishing you a wonderful rest of the week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, Dee. It's been a blast.
Thank you.